انت بتجمع الداتا بتاعتك وبتشوف الريزلتس بتاعتك وبتكتبها كما هي، لا تزود ولا تقلل ولا تضرب في فاكتور ولا. I would just like to attract your attention. If you look at the website of the department, you'll find a tab here written MD and an MSc. And if you open this tab, you'll find all the forms, كل الفورمات اللي انت محتاجها، شروط الدخول للتسجيل الماجستير او الدكتوراه، البروتوكول بتاع الثيسز، ورقه المناقشه. It's all here for you. You can تقدر تطبعها من البيت وتقدمها للمشرف بتاعك. It takes you to the link of the exam site in which the results are published on the same day, on the last day of the exam. Now let's come to the review of the literature, which is the first part of your thesis. It presents an important part of your thesis. It's an overview of what you know and what you don't know. As you're doing the review, you'll discover a lot of knowledge that you didn't know about until you did this review. You'll find your sources in journals, books, theses, conference proceedings, reports, and websites. Your review must be selective, focused, relevant, and it should capture the essence of the current knowledge and up to date. You should select your topic based on your research question, and you work your way backwards. You look at the most recent and the most up to date, and then you work your way backwards. You should identify the core literature. You define the subject and the scope of your review. You search the libraries and databases, then you review and evaluate each source. Is it suitable or not? هتجيب البيبرز، في بيبرز بعد ما هتجيبها هتلاقيها not suitable, you discard it, and papers are very relevant, you keep them. So analysis of this data, of these papers, is very important. So you've done that, you start your data collection. Where do you go? Your hospital or university library, where all the books and journals are stacked on the shelves. The librarian will be of great help if you have one like that one. Books, journals. In the hospital library and university library, you'll now find computers with access to journals with subscriptions. كتير قوي من المستشفيات هتلاقي المشتركه في البون اند جوينت، مشتركه في الكلينيكال اورثوبيدكس، etc. So you can access from the hospital or from the library. Then you go on the online search engines. You have different ones. Medline, which is free of charge, and it's well known to us. Google Scholar, and this will include not only literature peer-reviewed journals, but also books, conference proceedings, theses, dissertations, preprints before the article is published. You can find the abstracts there. There is the Cochrane Library, which is composed of 50 free review groups all over the world, comprising 30,000 experts. And they systemically review healthcare interventions and diagnostic tests. It addresses a specific question, it's peer-reviewed, it's trusted, and the most important, it's dynamic and it's always updated. Web of Science, this is subscription-based. It's scientific citation index service. The selection is based on the impact evaluations, and it allows access to multiple databases like scholarly books, journals, conference proceedings, and citations from the year 1900. Scopus, again, this is subscription-based. It is selective. It includes citations from 1996. It analyzes search results, and it compares journals. Gray literature is very important because it tells you about the literature is not published in sources as books and journals, like government reports, conference proceedings, graduate dissertations, and most important, unpublished clinical trials. There could be clinical trials going on in which identified a failure or a disaster, and these trials are discontinued. You will find these results in something like gray literature, and you will not find it published elsewhere. So it is very important. Now then, where you retrieve your articles from, as we mentioned before, from your library. There are open access journals that do not need a subscription, and you can get the full text online on your computer. Subscriptions as the hospital or your institution or university. Some of your colleagues who subscribe to one of the journals could help you, and you can buy your own subscription. but this is not practical. It will be very expensive. And it will only include one journal. So to subscribe to many journals, it's a lot of money. And nobody does it in the Western world. They all depend on their hospital library and access. There are some sites like LibGen that might allow you to access some journals and get the full text, although it could be a subscription one. Now then, you have to evaluate the papers that you've collected. So you collected most of the papers you needed for your study. Identify which is classic and which is up-to-date information. Now you have to look at your work. Is your work original or complementary or additional to current information? Because this will form the basis of your discussion. Now you're starting to write the review. You've collected all the material and you evaluated the papers. You discarded the ones that are not needed. You identified which are the core papers in the literature and which is the most up-to-date information and recent information. So you're starting to write. You have to divide the review into sections, as I'm going to show you later on. It has to be focused. It has to be concise, to the point, relevant. Not more than 1/3 to 1/2 of your thesis. يعني ما ينفعش thesis 100 صفحة وريفيو the literature 60-70 صفحة. It should be the opposite. Review the literature should مثلا be 40 صفحة. And your work and your results and your discussion تبقى من 60 ل 70 صفحة. So your work, your cases, should be the main bulk of the thesis, not the review. You prepare a list of papers for each section. زي الاناتومي. دي البيبرز اللي هنستعملها في السكشن بتاع الاناتومي. Prepare a list of diagrams for each section. Cite the references in Vancouver style. Do you know Vancouver style? Okay. Now you cite the references based on the priority in which they were mentioned in the thesis, in the literature. يعني أنت بتكتب أول paragraph, the reference would be number 1. paragraph اللي بعده the reference would be number 2. إذا number 1 ده اتكرر بعد كده في الليترشر هترجع تحط على الباراجراف ده إن ده كان reference number 1 اللي ذكر في أول مرة في الليترشر. The opposite is the Harvard style in which the references are mentioned are cited based on the alphabetical order of the reference. So Vancouver style is very important. لو فتحت أي paper وبصيت في الليست of references ورا هتلاقيها مكتوبة Vancouver style وريفير ليها في الثيسز as numbers. You can do manual numbering, بس you'll get caught. If you are reviewing this with your supervisor, لو المشرف شال باراجراف أو شال chapter أو شال جزء من الثيسس يبقى حضرتك لازم تعيد ترقيم كل ما يأتي من بعدها. أو لو المشرف أو أنت لقيت إنك عايز تضيف جزء في الشابتر ده يبقى هتعيد ترقيم كل الريفرنس بتاعتك. And this is very difficult. The best is to use software assisted numbering like Mendeley or EndNote, and people who didn't use that regretted it. ندموا. تشيل حتى ريفرنس واحد هيغير كل حاجة من بعديها. It's very important to use it. Now then, let's discuss an example. Relevant sections. Okay, anatomy, biomechanics, pathology, etiology, clinical presentation, investigations, treatment, results of different methods of treatment, complications. Now let's look at something like meniscal repair. You need to write about the anatomy, the shape and the attachment of the meniscus, the histology and chemical composition, the biomechanics and function, the classification of meniscal tears, healing of meniscal tears, diagnosis of meniscal tears, and treatment. When you write your thesis, as my colleague mentioned, Dr. Walid, write short sentences and short paragraphs. Use a font that is neither small nor large. One example is Times New Roman, size 12, is reasonable. Now, with spacing, you have to use 1.5 to 2 spaces between each line. If you use only a single line, it will be very crowded. And this has to be all through the thesis. Guttering is very important. You have to leave margins on the right, on the left, and the top, on the bottom. Use headings and subheadings, but remember you can have only one main heading, but many subheadings as much as you like. Now, spelling and grammar. English is not your mother tongue. احنا اللغة بتاعتنا اللغة العربية، واللغة الإنجليزية دي لغة المستعمر الأجنبي فرضها علينا، بس هي مفروضة علينا أكتر دلوقتي لأن كل الريسيرش وكل البيبرز are written in English. في حاجات بالفرنساوي، في حاجات بالألماني، بس the majority is in English. You have to know English. That's why in India they have schools where you learn English near Chandri Chowk, and the majority of the Indian doctors go to these schools and they pass the OET, they pass the IELTS test, and they pass the PLAB test, and they pass the FRCS test, and as a result, 1/3 of the workforce in the United Kingdom are of Indian origin. Pakistani, Bengali, Punjabi, Indian, etc. 1/3. تلت الدكاترة النهاردة في التأمين الصحي البريطاني من الهند وباكستان. Because they put a lot of effort in it. Now then, when you're writing your thesis, you're using Word. Remember, there's a trap with auto-correction in dictionaries. For instance, is color going to be with a U or without? Is gray with an A or an E? Now then, it could get confused between would and could. So you have to read the paragraphs, because would is going to be correct spelling and could be correct spelling, but which one do you want? Find or fight. So be careful with, don't depend on auto-correction or don't depend on the word dictionary. You have to read the paragraph and see if it makes sense or not. Punctuation marks are very important. That's just a quick description, the full stop, the comma, the colon, the semicolon, etc. Don't just write the paragraph and that's it. Our sentence and that's it. A sentence and with a full stop, know how to use, when to use the comma, when to use the colon and the semicolon. Diagrams are very important. It's an important part of your thesis, and they should be referenced. So you should prepare a list of diagrams for each section of your review. Avoid plagiarism, because your work could be found out and rejected. There have been incidents in أستاذ راح يناقش رسالة وبعدين بيفتح كده ويقراها، اكتشف إن الرسالة دي هو كان مشرف عليها مع طالب تاني. حصلت لك ولا؟ طب بس حكت سمعتها. حكايه حقيقيه. مش بس كده، don't depend on anybody to write your thesis. على الكمبيوتر بتاعك اكتب الثيسس بتاعتك، لا توديها مكتب ولا توديها حته تانية. ليه؟ الشغل ده ممكن يتسرق. اول ما وديتها الراجل يقول لك هاتها عشان انسقها لك واوضبها لك وايفها لك عشان تبقى 100 100، واول ما يحطها على الكمبيوتر ياخد منها كوبي. يجي واحد تاني من جامعه عين شمس عايز يعمل ريسيرش على نفس الموضوع، يديله ثيسس جاهزه بالحالات بالصور بالاشعاعات، واخد بالك، وصعب دي نكتشفها الا اذا كنت انا مثلا مشرف على رساله هنا ورحت اناقش رساله هناك وطلعت هي نفس الرساله. فحافظ على الورك بتاعك، ما تشاركوش غير مع المشرفين، وانت ما تودوش اي مكتب بره نسق ولا يعمل. تعلم انت تنسق وتوضب، الموضوع مش سهل. It is not rocket science. You wrote your review, you just have to revise it and finalize it. So make sure that the relevant information is included. There is proper sentencing and paragraphing, punctuation marks, diagrams, formatting, spelling and grammar, citation and referencing. This is very important. The diagrams has to be referenced. If it's not a picture from your own work, you have to put the reference, where did you get this picture from? Now remember, it's not how much you write. في واحد بيجيب رسالة مش عارف 200 300 صفحة حاجة قد كده. I'll just remind you, the landmark paper that described the composition of RNA and DNA was published in Nature, and it was only 1 page. تخيل البيورينز والدبل ستراندد والسنجل ستراندد والدي ان اي والار ان اي، كل المعلومات دي اتنشرت في صفحة واحدة في مجلة Nature. ف it's not how much you write, it's about the content of what you write. فمش مهم الثيسس تبقى 100 صفحة 150 200، this is not important. المهم فيها ايه. So in summary, your review has to be relevant, concise and focused. There's many common knowledge that you don't need to repeat again and again and again. You need to choose the relevant knowledge. It should not be more than 1/2 to 1/3 of your thesis. Your work should be the main bulk. You should collect the data and abstracts from search engines. Evaluate the data that you collect. أنهي paper هتنفع وأنهي paper مش هتنفع. أنهي paper مهمة core paper أو landmark paper. أنهي paper up to date. Retrieve the whole articles, recent and classic. Write it properly. Revise and reference accurately, and print and produce. And remember, at the end of the day, it's an important part of your thesis. And it is the information that you know and what you don't know when you start reviewing your literature. Thank you very much.